Chapter 6. The harmonica served to cheer up the two travellers. They wanted to put the incident of finding the injured man behind them. Other, more pressing matters weighed heavily on their shoulders. Alf, the faithful collie cross, began to snarl. "It's all right, Alfie. It's only your daddy on an old harmonica," said Bruno. The dog continued to snarl, however, even when Bruno had put down his harmonica. Bruno allowed his rifle to come down off his shoulder and cocked it. He was ready to fire at the slightest provocation. "Halt! Who goes there?" he shouted out in his loudest voice. There was a sharp crack of some twigs. The Veltimes looked round and found that they had been surrounded by some dozen heavily armed elves. The large gang of elves had flaming torches with them. The bitter wintry wind blew the tarry oil smell from their torches towards the startled Veltimes. Yellow and orange flame colours flickered off the forest all around. "Put the gun down, good sir. We only give warnings twice, and then it's a bolt straight into your legs, I'm afraid. So that counts as the first of the two. As soon as your gun's down, then we have it in our possession. We want you to deal with your dog. As soon as your gun is down, now we have it in our possession. We want you to deal with your dog. We do not really care what you do, but if you let him bite us, then we take an eye for an eye. They tell me I'm too kind, because my predecessor just fired straight for the heart. He wasn't a gambling man like me, you see," said a wiry bearded elf with a very powerful crossbow aimed directly at Bruno's legs. "Tell your daughter to tie up that barking hound right now. He don't look too friendly to me, so get him tied up now." Another elf addressed Monica. "If you don't mind, missy, I'd very much like you to move away from your fancy liveried Veltime sledge. Show us your hands, if you'd be so kind, sweetie. Dreadfully, dreadfully cold this evening, isn't it? We were only saying to ourselves that we couldn't remember a winter like it up here for a good 200 years. Tobias here is a good 245 years old. He says that this is definitely the worst winter he's seen. But he does have a penchant for strong ale and an eye for the ladies, so we don't think he's our most reliable walking weather archiver. We have others whom we do rely on with the weather forecasting and seasons and stargazing and whatnot." Bruno gingerly unslung his rifle from his shoulder. He told the elves it was loaded, so he didn't want to let it fall on the ground. Two stout elves wielding clubs and axes, with stone slings in side pockets, quickly emerged to disarm him. One of the elves simply stayed in axe range of Bruno, as the others got to work on removing the rifle from him. The first elf to threaten him then continued, "That's awfully kind of you, sir. We must ask you to stand absolutely still. If you would be a complete gentleman and show us your hands at all times, it would be awfully decent of you. My. They are hard-working hands, aren't they? You two look like decent grafting sorts. Don't tell me you're going to market, aren't you? That's an impressive sled you've decked out. I really must learn from you guys about how to promote myself a bit more. It's all about self-promotion these days, isn't it? I'm really loving the all made by our very good selves phrase on your sled. Mind you, it wouldn't matter down there, even if you were old King Dominitz himself. Aren't they just a mean lot down there at Braunstadt, though? They drive a hard bargain, don't they? Sales seem to depend on how many family connections you have as well. They want you to teach them how to make the stuff you sell for free as well. It must be very frustrating for a family like you to have made high-quality handmade goods to find that the cash is all going to cronies among families. Plus there's a new competition to all of you in the shape of the suited and booted fancy factory magnates and their mass-produced cack and tack." Another elf gave his pennyworth of advice. "The whole damn Braunstadt market could soon be dead out of the water unless some fancy bigwig from the city offers you guys a lifeline. And the locals? If they do not know you, or you do not let them have stuff so cheap that it burns a hole in your pocket, they get really clicky and pretend your store doesn't exist. You do look real plucky, you two, but something about you Veltimes tells me you must be a little bit desperate," said another younger and heavily moustached elf. "Yes, we smell desperation. You're on a mission, that much we can surely tell," said another. "Don't mind if we take a peek at your market goodies, do you? I'm dying to see what goods you clever farming folks are making and then taking to market these days. We won't pinch anything or mess up your tidy stock. We're always polite where possible. I've got a real nice smile," he said, One of the crossbow-armed elves then smiled widely to reveal very ugly decayed teeth and a severely receding gum line. He continued, "Funny how no one fixed my teeth. You'd think that what with all the gold we mine, that someone would have done me that honour. But no, I'm just pig ugly, but I do have a good party piece. I call it my stinky trick. Folks are real curious about my stinky trick. Saying that, the stout elf stood firmly on the spot and broke wind. He looked quite shocked and leaned heavily over. The new posture didn't improve matters, because he then broke wind very loudly again. Brrrap! His raised behind retorted. That reminds me, Bruno, isn't it? We were just listening to you playing that old harmonica of yours. It sounds much better than the old accordion we sometimes hear you play. If I may say so, that old accordion of yours sounds dreadful. But cheer up, it's not your playing, kind sir, it's the instrument. My companion thinks that some of your accordion reeds are out of tune, which spoils the pleasure of the listeners somewhat, doesn't it? How sinister to think that you lot are watching and listening to us as we go about our lawful business from my family farm. You should be ashamed of yourself, said Bruno angrily. How sinister to think that you lot are watching and listening to us as we go about our lawful business from my family farm. You should be ashamed of yourselves, said Bruno angrily. If I might be so bold as to correct you on that point, Bruno, the forest is a public place, and we have to make a living from this mountainside, just as you wonderful Veltimes have to. We share this forest and the resources with you. If you happen to be around when we are busy going about our lawful business, whether it's lumber work or quarrying or even hunting, then we're bound to come across you, just as we come across everyone who passes through these parts. We do not make our presence known to folks if we can help it, because we have our own scouts. Now, if you want to raise alarm about us and call us bandits and highwaymen, then that would be a big mistake on your part. We happen to know that you're in real big trouble at the moment with your Veltime family farm up here on the beautiful Mount Rauba. You're in truly big brown bear doo-doo about how you're going to manage the affairs of your estate. The last thing you need to do is to hurt us, because you've already got more than enough enemies as it is. Besides, we might just be able to help you in some simple way. You never know. Us Hickey Mountain elves might just be your little saviours, said the elf with a crossbow. Alsteph was still snarling at the armed elves. He was tied up to a tree, but was pulling heavily on the rope and snapping towards any elf who came within reach of it. Alsteph, it's going to hurt you if you keep pulling on that rope, shouted a very agitated Monica. Soon, around 10 elves were all over the Veltime family sled and about the temporary camp. One of the elves tasted the bubbling stew and veg. A little overcooked, if you ask me. Nice tender beef chunks, mind. The meat is definitely from a pedigree herd of fine cattle. I can tell you're a fine beef farmer. Did you manage this for 28 days, perchance? A little overcooked, if you ask me. Nice tender beef chunks, mind. This meat is definitely from a pedigree herd of fine-bred cattle. I can tell that you are fine beef farmers up here. Did you mature this for 28 days, perchance? You really must give me the recipe. It could be the toast of the underground city if I could bang out 600 portions of this on Bierkel a night. Can't say it's perfect, mind you. I think it could do with some more red wine, perhaps some oregano or rosemary. Ooh, you've overdone the garlic, I must say. Perhaps it could be livened up with shallots and the addition of some red onions and tarragon. But that's a matter of taste, I suppose, said the female elf who carried a sword and had a very deadly-looking catapult in her belt holster. What the hell is going on here? Roared an imposing elf who strolled into the clearing. All eyes turned to him as the others stopped what they were doing. The elves nosily combing the Veltime family sled sheepishly put the tarpaulins down. Under the flaming torchlight, the Veltimes could clearly see that the elf leader had very long hair that had been extensively plaited. Various vegetable dyes arranged in vertical rows of separate rainbow colours had been worked into his beard. His impressive moustache was twirled to perfection. He also sported beads and braids in his long hair. To cap it all, he was heavily pierced with various golden studs and charms. His face was craggy, but not haggard. His countenance was one of dry and caustic overtones. I suppose you two hard-working family folks are wondering why an army of mountain elves has ambushed your little stopover up here. Well, we haven't got all night to explain ourselves, so let's just stick to the basics here. You apparently found a man in a state close to death, some 16 miles back, close to the Avalanche. You apparently found a man in a state close to death, some 16 miles back, close to Avalanche Ridge. He had a satchel with him. And to put it into a nutshell, or should I say, put it into a satchel, we want the stuff that the man took back. Long and short of it is that the satchel contents doesn't belong to the thieving vagabond who took the contents from us. You mean do not belong, don't you? Said Monica, correcting the elf leader. Beg pardon, m'lady, I means it don't belong to him. It ain't known for polite manners, missy. Beg pardon, m'lady, I means it don't belong to him. I ain't known for polite manners, missy, apologised the elf leader as he forced out a very loud burp. The man you rescued is part of a nasty gang of outsiders who are poking their noses about our business. We don't bother no one as a rule, except if someone bothers us. Then we get a little upset, shall we say. But I'm getting all sidetracked here, teacher missy. We came to visit you, good folks, for 3 reasons, actually. Only thing is I've forgotten what they all are, so beg pardon my bad speech. You must forgive me, only see... But I'm getting all sidetracked here, teacher missy. We came here to visit you good folks for 3 reasons, actually. Only thing is... But I'm getting all sidetracked here, teacher missy. We came to visit you good folks for 3 reasons, actually. Only thing is, I've forgotten what they all are, or were, so beg pardon my bad speech. You must forgive me. Only you see, I'm 198 years old, and for my sins, they've put me in charge of all of the elves in the kingdom of the Ingolbers. My name is Aelfred. It's a strange name. My name is Aelfred. It's a strange name, but you'll get used to it. My assistant Freda will fill in all the legal details about how you've complicated things since you've rescued the criminal back there on Avalanche Ridge. I'm Freda, as the good Aelfred has introduced me. I'll cut out any more formalities of greeting. Basically, you two are in big trouble unless you can get us the satchel and its contents back, all intact. We would be, of course, grateful if you could also hand over the filthy scum who took the bag and just about killed one of us. However, your part of this binding contract is simply to find the means to get our satchel back. If you can do that for us, then we will deal with the man who took it from us. We're basically peaceable folk with all the trappings of hicky out-of-town, woody moonshine drinking. We're not fussy about what you folks do outside of this area, but you see, if you go poking about deep in the forest and off the beaten track of the Pilgrim's Trail, you was heading for the little people's domain, and you will be watched. You'll be watched like a hawk. We knows if you so much as break wind like Brother Abel did back then. How do you know we've got satchel anyway? Asked Bruno testily. He was wearing thin on patience now, knowing that being delayed here could cost him a small fortune in lost market revenue. All we know is that you 2 fine Alpine folks were involved in rescuing that tow rag with a broken ankle. We knows he's got a broken ankle because we kindly broke it for him. The elf who broke it was supposed to break his neck, but he ain't got the guts to do that, so went for his ankle instead, hoping that we could recover the satchel at least. Only the man was a lot stronger than we thought, and he dragged our satchel and his sorry behinds for 3 kilometres before collapsing at the roadside where you 2 farming suckers found him, said Freda. So how are we going to get your satchel back if the man is now recovering where we left him? How do you expect us to believe your story about him being an intruder who took your property when the only thing we know about you so far is that you lot are good at blocking the way of law-abiding legitimate travellers? Oh, and one other thing. You good folks fire off crossbow bolts at perfectly innocent people like me and my daughter. Do not even begin to tell me that it wasn't you lot who fired at us as we headed home from being fleeced at last month's village fiasco that passes for the name of market. Do not even begin to tell me that it wasn't you lot who fired at us as we headed home from being fleeced at last month's village fiasco that passes for the name of market, said Bruno, losing his temper with every further minute of delay. Ooh, now just hold on, Herr Welltime. You are being offered a once-in-a-lifetime golden opportunity to... Ooh, now just hold on, Herr Welltime. You're being offered a once-in-a-lifetime golden opportunity to set off on the right foot with us good folks here. We ain't ever going to meet you like this at your market stall, and we sure ain't going to book an appointment to see you on your Purdy farm, so I'm afraid meeting us like this is as good as it gets, said Aelfred. My advice would be to stop trying to poke about old embers of the fire that are long since cold. If anyone really meant to hurt you, your daughter, or your doggy, or your little cute mountain ponies, then I think we can safely say that it would have been done last month, and make no mistake about it. I ordered the crossbow bolts to be fired off in your direction with a proviso that they missed you. I wanted to show you that we have teeth. We can't mix with folks outside our tribe, but with you Veltons we had to draw a line tonight because you helped a man back there on Avalanche Ridge. I really do admire you folks for helping the stricken man, but you gone and done a bad thing in the end. You see, you gone and just made it a teeny weeny bit harder for ourselves because you didn't wait around long enough when you found that man. Just another 10 minutes and we would have taken possession. Just another 10 minutes and we would have taken possession of that swine. You could have been on your way with no questions asked, and we would have avoided this whole scene here tonight. But you were in such an infernal hurry to get away from Avalanche Ridge that you missed your chance. Now this is going to be your last and only chance, I'm afraid. Now it's imperative, and that's a big word for me, that we get back the contents of that satchel which was stolen from us. If you can kindly inform us within the next 3 days of how we can get our stuff back, then you two can live happily ever after as if nothing had ever happened. Well, as happy as you two mountain folk can be with all the gubbins of the modern industrial age ripping your hillbilly hearts out. Which reminds me, let's have a sing-song. With that, 3 of the gang of elves came out of the clearing and took up on their instruments. The first had a banjo and was the lead singer. The others were on fiddle, and the third played fast, flat-pick, open-tuned country guitar and a jumbo western. Percussion was provided by the rest of the elves, and a general open-tuning hoedown tune was trotted out, with plenty of whoops and even a circle of elves dancing merrily around the now dying campfire. After 5 minutes of a general country-style dance, the elf deputy Freda finally addressed the Veltons. We'll leave you two mountain goats in peace now, but we'll be back in some shape or form to collect our satchel contents. If you want to live a peaceable life up here, we expect that you'll find our stuff just as soon as you can. We're so decent that if you get us the satchel and its contents back, we'll give the satchel back, because the satchel ain't our property, but the contents sure as hell are. If you come looking for us to carry out some sort of sick revenge, if you come looking for us to carry out some sort of sick revenge attack in support of the vagabond you rescued, we'll cut you down. Bring a pack of vigilantes and we'll make sure that no one ever sees any of you ever again. Oh, and we're real partial to gingerbread and any bottles of real ale you might throw in. Aelfred here has an awful sweet tooth, you see. He's been taking a great liking to fancy cream horns and all those melt-in-the-mouth pastries that you good folk from the towns and villages are stuffing into their hungry faces. Only, you see, he's got the gallbladder problems now, and we've been told by our docs to put him on a special diet. He can't have no wheat products, no dairy, no alcohol, no acid stuff, no more. You folks better be careful, because Aelfred is getting awfully bad-tempered these days because of his gallbladder problems. We're partial to most any of your city food, but do not bother us with no inferior tobacco. We like only the finest, please. Please, oh pretty please, will you get us some new mouth organs or penny whistles for us to teach the tone-deaf elves on? Only we spent a lot of time in quarries and mines and such, and it's awful boring without a fellow elf to entertain you with a little ditty now and then. Freda's last words seemed to linger in the air. Then, in less than 10 seconds, the entire band of mountain elves simply vanished back into the forest, as if they'd never ever been at the Veltine fireside at all. Bruno found his gun left behind a tree some 20 metres away. The bullet had been ejected from the barrel. He ran back with his rifle to find the stew cold and the fire barely a crackle of embers in the night. Monica and Bruno could do no more but carry on. In stunned silence, they relit the fire and wolfed down as much as they could of the beef stew, and took as much of the acorn herbal coffee with added almonds and malted barley and dates as they could. They knew there was a small mountain stream nearby. Here they washed their pots and pans, taking the chance to fill up their water bottles from the crystal clear waters. It was only high up in the Alps that untreated water could be trusted, as long as you knew that there were no dead animals contaminating it further upstream. Cholera and typhoid had struck lower down in the more populated valleys, as Saul had already told them. Quickly, Monica, help me to pack the sled and tidy up after the mess they've left from rifling through it. Let's get the hell out of here and try to make it to market before we get fined. If we do not make it on time, they will penalise us, and may even give our stall away, unless they accept our reasons for lateness. Our neighbours on the other stalls are not exactly on our side, I feel. You do not know that, Father. All we do know is that every one of our fellow market traders are feeling the pinch. Margins are incredibly tight. If we simply let people who rile us or take things get to us, we will be paralysed by inaction. Surely the best thing to do is just carry on. If we make a big fuss about someone taking something from our stall, then all that will happen is that less people will shop at the market, because the whole place will be watched like a hawk for a few markets worth of trading. It'll put people off from buying anything. The market authorities have to be seen to be doing the right thing. That doesn't mean that they're going to change the way that the market runs. It just means that you're creating a problem for them. The whole point of the market is that it gives people a choice. People like to wander about and price check. Most of our customers have been around the whole place before and took a good look first. No one seems to be in a hurry to buy anything. Some of our customers seem to enjoy testing our patience. They mentally count how many times you bring the same stock to market. They remember your pricing levels. It's like pulling teeth to get some of them to spend out. The authorities know about the types of customers. A lot of customers like to try and haggle a bit on price, but they do not like people staring at them as they wander the stalls. Father and daughter were careful to put the fire out properly. They covered the dying embers with water to quench the heat, and then they dug some fresh earth to cover the fire over. They put any bottles used into a box and took them together with any rubbish back on the sled. The Veltams liked to keep the forest as tidy as they could, since they depended on it for their resources like timber and stone. Keeping the water supplies clean and unpolluted was also equally important. If we now just crack on and try and make it to the market in one go, we might just make it. The authorities want to see me about what happened last time, so I'm afraid I'll have to leave you to do most of the setting up, Monica. Don't go mad with price cuts. I really think it's a year. I really think this year seems to have been a new title, and I'm calling it Woe Behind. I really think this year seems to have a new title, and I'm calling it Woe Betide the Veltimes. Bramstadt village in snow was a magnificent sight. A number of rustic stone bridges crossed the powerful mountain streams which separated the village from the rest of the wild region. Getting the railway here had been a big engineering challenge. The engineers had to blast their way through a mountain by tunnelling out huge quantities of rock. The railway was breathing new life into the commercial side of the town, but it only seemed to benefit those who wanted to jump on board the express train of modern progress. For farming families, there were stark words of advice in the local papers. Adapt or die was one of the favourites in reference to the theories of evolution flying around. Survival of the fittest was another gem that the press liked to trot out whenever any challenge to the local economies came about. A somewhat Luddite approach to progress had caught on in some villages, where various parish councils decided to ban some of the more modern goods, or even looked into ways of blocking the opening up of their markets in livestock, perishables and home manufactured goods to all outsiders. The outlook for traditional farming was looking bleak. Or was it? Bruno was greeted at the market entrance by the burly figures of the village elder and his henchmen, who collected market rents and sorted out all manner of stallholder disputes and complaints. I believe we need a word, Herr Veltime. I believe we need a word, Herr Veltime. Bruno was ushered away as soon as he had offloaded his market stall goods, with Monica assisting him. He led the 2 horses and his faithful dog to the stables and made the necessary feeding and canning arrangements, making his way to the upmarket tavern called the Rutting Stags, where market management did its business. Bruno was led quickly upstairs to a plush carpeted room. He could already smell the tobacco smoke and the brandy and cigar smoke in the air. The walls were adorned with hunting regalia. There were oil paintings of hunting scenes on the steep forested mountains of the Alps, and crossed rifles and powder pouches and belts. There were heads of stags and even brown bears' heads on wooden plaques. The market manager, Obstein Wolfund, was sat with some of his deputies around him at a huge polished oaken table. Grandfather clocks ticked merrily behind him, some even showing the phases of the moon. An orderly brought in some cold cooked meats on a silver tray, and there was a selection of pretzels and plain oat biscuits on offer, together with very hot black coffee. Herr Wolfund met him with cold green piercing eyes. His right eye looked enormous through a golden rimmed monocle held on a chain from his waistcoat pocket. Herr Wolfund began. There are 2 main problems that we've got to deal with since last month's farmers' market. Number 1. This is all about you claiming that stock is being taken without recompense on your stall. Number 2, we have other stallholders claiming that a charming old chap was bragging that your family was just about giving away stock last month. The other traders here at Bramstadt Market are claiming that your daughter has lost the plot and will ruin all their trade by her insane deals to customers. She seems awfully fond of throwing in expensive items for free in unbeatable deals to customers who lay on a bit of blag and banter. Long and short of it is this. We've had a little meeting up here about a week ago for the other stallholders to give their version of events to the problems you raise. You see, Herr Veltime, my brief is to be impartial. I can't be seen to take sides on these issues. I'm not state aid and I'm not a charity, so I have to follow some oxygen. I'm not state aid and I'm not a charity, so I have to allow some oxygen into this debate about what to do about the Veltime farm trade problems at Brownstad Market. I insisted that you were kept in the dark about the little meeting we had a week ago, because it would have just turned into a slanging match had you been present when we discussed your stall. This little meeting was basically to pass a motion to have your family either fined or banned permanently for what happened to your stock here when you traded against the rules of our market. We have to bear in mind the ripple effects of what will happen on the market in future. Now, you will have a right to reply in writing only with a 2-week deadline for me to receive your version of events. I do not want any accusations or insults or excuses for what happened on your stall. I suggest that you use a reliable courier to convey your response to me. You will not be told who complained about you, nor what was said in the meeting. I chaired it in your enforced absence, but I also reserve the right to make a final decision on your future here at this village market. I must also warn you, Herr Veltime, that losing your temper will also make matters far worse for you. I'm sorry to see this happen to you after hundreds of years of your family trading here at our market, but times are tough. In fact, they're so tough that we're having to increase the rents on stalls to cover our costs, since people are pulling out and we need a fixed income spread from all of our traders. We've got a waiting list for stalls. Someone who's obviously not too fond of your family has proposed that they be allowed to sell exactly the same sort of things you sell, but they've promised us that they will be more professional than you and will not let the other traders down with silly special offers. We've got a waiting list for stalls, and someone who is obviously not too fond of your family has proposed that they be allowed to sell the same sort of things you sell, but they have promised us that they will be more professional than you and will not let the other traders down with silly special offers that ruin all market trade. I've got a brief from the town mayor. It's very simple, and it runs something like this. You organise the market, Herr Wolfhund. That's your job. If you can't do it to my satisfaction, then I'll find someone who can. If we carry on giving away stock, then we might as well join. If we carry on giving away stock, we might as well join all the beggars who get free food at the monastery and perhaps take up holy orders ourselves and live in the monk's cell for the rest of our lives. Say our prayers and penance plus fast. Do all the singing and worship that entails. Charity begins at home, and that's very true, Bruno. But no town runs on charity alone. I really am disappointed in you, Bruno. You wrote a letter to complain about being fleeced last market, but within 10 minutes of investigating it, I've discovered that you fabricated the events to paint yourself as the victim and make it out as if you were out of pocket due to foul play, when in reality your daughter seems ready to sell your family fortune down the River Ribbentrop here in the Silver Federation. Bruno sipped testily on the hot black coffee that he was served. Without doubt, among the other men at the table were those who were seeking to destroy him and his family. He thought it was one thing to be struggling due to the Industrial Revolution hitting town, yet it was altogether unfair and vicious to try and pull his family under by foul means. What motives lay behind his detractors, he wondered. The market manager continued. I've yet to decide your fate, but I'm a man who listens to reason, so I allowed the other stallholders who came to a meeting to take a vote on how we would call the shots on the Veltime family. I've yet to decide your fate, but I'm a man who listens to reason, so I allowed the other stallholders who came to the meeting to take a vote on how they would call the shots on the Veltime family. The final vote on our meeting last week, which wasn't entirely about you, you'll be pleased to know, declared that you should receive a hefty fine and be put on probation on a monthly basis. You would therefore be expected to be watched like a hawk for at least a year. I would need to have a fully completed stall and price list for every market stall you held here to comply with the ruling on your case. We would quiz your customers on a regular basis and ask for feedback. All in all, it doesn't sound too bad to me. At least your fellow stallholders are allowing you an option of surviving this crisis intact. That must be a big relief to you, I'm sure. The most vociferous of your detractors wanted you kicked off your stall for writing that false letter to me claiming you being fleeced last month. I urge you, Bruno, to sort out your crazy daughter. If you can't control her, keep her on a tight rein, then that really is the end for the Veltimes here, I'm afraid. We're not slaves to tradition now. The railway company rep met me 2 weeks ago. He wants to organise a meeting with the market traders to talk figures about taking round trips of tourists from the teeming cities to our market. It might finally be the big time, Bruno. Steam-powered coaches will be laid on to take the tourists to our stores steam-powered coaches will be laid on to take the tourists to our stores from the railway station. We'll get brand new flushing toilets, just like the sort they have in England, plus a new sewage system to deal with the expected large influx of new visitors to the town. It's all exciting stuff, Bruno. Our man from the railway company will promote the market and do a deal with tourists to allow them a basic meal and a drink here on a token system. They'll have to spend a certain amount of the market to get the tokens. We'll ask all traders to give dated receipts for purchases made here, and the market authorities, that's me, will refund the tokens with cash to those traders who have lost cash to them. We, that's the town council, then get our slice of the action from the railway company at the end of the financial month. The town wins, the market wins, hopefully you little people also win. It's a sweet deal, and it's not just us who will benefit. We've set up a committee to look into a nice outdoor show for the city folks and strangers who will come up here on the railway to spend their hard-earned cash in our Alpine town. There'll be top-class music from professionals on accordions, clarinets, flutes, trumpets, pianos, you name it, plus dozens of dancers, some classical music, and, wait for it, some opera performances from rising stars on special days. We even went a little bit crazy and thought about yodeling competitions, mountain horn blowing. The possibilities are endless. If it was just up to me, I'd go for the best mustachioed man competitions, or perhaps arm wrestling in a big marquee. We really just need to get the ball rolling in the first place. Do you get the picture, Herr Valtime? Now, back to the matter of your market stall. Your fellow stallholders have already voted on your fate. Yes, they do have a right to be listened to, so I'll bear in mind their opinions. I still haven't finally made up my mind what to do about you just yet, so I will of course be waiting for your full written account of events. I may even have to hold another meeting based on what you have to say to me in writing in response to this meeting. I need it in writing because I have to have your words put down, so I can't be accused of putting a slant on this, Herr Veltheim. I read all the things you put to me recently, but I'm afraid, as I said earlier, that I'm not a fool, and I would have to receive an entirely different kind of letter from you to put things straight. I'm looking for words like sorry, I apologise, and I promise it will never happen again from you in your next letter. If you can't manage to rewrite the letter you sent to me so that it fully meets my satisfaction, then I'm afraid that you and I will fall out permanently. Finally, Bruno, I'm in a big rush, just as you are, so here's your chance to exercise your vocal cords to all and sundry around my table. You've got 2 minutes to set the ball rolling with regard to a verbal response to anything I've just said now. Bruno cleared his throat. You can't expect me to be happy about what happened to my takings last month. All I do know is that someone took my daughter for a mug, and I have to find out who did it and why they did it. I've absolutely no doubt in my mind that my daughter would not hand over an expensive item for free. All I can do now is promise you that I will request that Monica does not discount any stock without my permission. For perishables, I know the market rules. You do not want them to be reduced until the last 2 hours of market. For other goods, the rules are more tight. Because there is reduced demand for non-food goods, you stipulated that we must try to keep our prices higher than our cheap mass-produced competitors in the shops. It sounds crazy, I know, but you do not want us to be cheap with regards to handcrafted goods. You say that if we try to compete with the cheap mass-produced stuff, it will kill us dead out of the water. You want instead to promote the market's high-quality handcrafted elements to the maximum extent in order to set us apart from the factory production lines as being a unique draw for customers who will hopefully travel many miles just to find our quirky goods. In that, Herr Wolfund, I am now in full agreement with you. Obstein Wolfund then responded quickly in grave tones. If we find you breaking this agreement, then I'm afraid we will shut you down today for good. Everybody's getting very jumpy these days. Your fellow traders are very nervous, Herr Veltheim. The future isn't certain, and the future isn't looking certain, and we do not want a trader who just makes it worse for all of us. We've got to cope in these uncertain times. With this severe dressing down still ringing in his ears, Bruno descended the stairs of the richly carpeted Rutting Stag's Inn, feeling numb. He was very angry about how they treated him at the market, but what else could he do but accept their harsh terms, knowing that at every step they were looking to trip him up?